We're glad you're here. Good morning, and as Tom said, my name is Dave Gruen. First of all, let me kind of acknowledge who's here. I know we've got an interesting blend of different types of people from the industry here. I know we've got some actual retailers here. How many people are actually from a retail company? Okay, I know we've got Nordstrom's, I think, is here, London Drugs, McDonald's. Anybody else? Starbucks. Well, of course. A shameless plug for Starbucks I threw in there for you. There you go. We also have, obviously, a large group of ISPs here today, and some solution providers have joined us as well. So we've got an interesting blend, and what I'm going to do is kind of turn a twist here a little bit for about 30 minutes and give you kind of, I guess, what I'll call Microsoft's perspective from the retailer's point of view. I am the National Retail Consulting Practice Manager. I'm in charge of about 20-ish very talented consultants based from coast to coast, Seattle to Miami, that focus exclusively on helping retailers turn business problems into business solutions with the Microsoft platform. About half the team, including myself, actually come out of the retail industry, so have real-world retail experience. And some of the things we know and love that occur in the retail environment, like shutting down the entire chain when you release a patch. Didn't think it was going to be a big deal. That one always, has it happened to any of the retailers here? That's a lot of fun, especially a couple weeks before Christmas. Or any physical inventory activity. That always was a lot of fun. But these guys have been there, they know what it's like, and they're also very, very good technically with Microsoft's platforms, and so are really good liaisons between the two worlds. I was formerly the CIO at specialty retailers Gadzooks, which is a apparel soft-line retailer catering to teenagers, primarily Midwest to the East. So if you're from Canada or the West, you probably haven't heard of us. And the Bombay Company, which is actually coast to coast and in Canada as well, especially retailers specializing in home furnishings. The conference focus, as Tom mentioned, is architecting a digital nervous system for the retail enterprise. And I don't know about you, but I think this is an incredibly exciting time to be in the retail industry. There are more options, more technology being thrown at the retail industry than probably at any time in their history. And as we all know, retailers love tons of options, especially retail IT people, because you can't get enough cool technology in those stores fast enough, right? I'm obviously being funny. What's interesting is you've got an interesting blend of the frontline people, the merchants and the store operations people, who are seeing things around them, forcing them to react, to change, to try and be more proactive. And literally just about every time they want to do something, immediately they're turning around to the IT folks and saying, you got to help us, because we have no idea what we're doing in terms of how we implement these types of functions through technology into the retail environment. So the retailer IT group is being forced to change, and they're now coming out of that administrative necessary evil function and literally standing right behind the front line of the most critical functions in the retail environment. And then, of course, there's Microsoft, and all we want to know is where you want to go today. It's an exciting time to be in retail, but I guess that depends on who you ask, because there's a large group of the retailer community, especially in the IT world, who view these rapid technology changes as a tremendous threat. So when you look at e-business, I see classically two types of people's approaches to e-business. I have no idea what this is, or I know I need to get into it, but I have no idea where to start. And then there's a very small group of people who get it and understand how e-business is going to really help them in the retail environment, but they're struggling a little bit with how do I get this into the business? Because as we all know, retailers invented the concept of margin. They're very cheap. They like to get a lot for nothing. I've been there. And so going out and just gutting and replacing your entire infrastructure is not an option for a lot of people. Not to say that that's absolutely critical to make that work, but a lot of people are dealing with a lot of stuff that's been around for a long time, and it's still working really well. The decaying store technology infrastructure, the speed of business, we're going to look at this a little bit, has increased so rapidly in the last 5 years, it's catching the entire industry off guard. And we have more than ever educated customers who are very, very knowledgeable about not only what's out there, but the differences between the offerings that the retailers are providing. Then there's the people who are looking at the glass as half full, who are saying e-business is a tremendous opportunity, literally has the potential to be a differentiator for our company, and we want to take advantage of it, and we're going to start trying to figure out how. Web-enabled environment flexibility. I was actually personally involved in integrating this into two specialty retailers, one who the Bombay company is now completely deployed with their web-enabled in-store environment. We're going to look at some examples of that today. And they are just now starting to become amazed at some of the opportunity and some of the flexibility that that environment is affording them. More connectivity options than ever before between the mergers and all of the offerings that are coming out that are now affordable. You don't have to be Kmart anymore to be able to afford decent interactive connectivity with your stores. How are we as a smaller group or as an entire industry taking advantage of some of these things? And then this concept of the digital nervous system, which I'm going to go into here in a little bit. But what are some of the key driving forces that are mandating change in this industry? Well, obviously, the one that we can't hear enough about is the Internet as catalyst. What's interesting to me about this slide is when you look at both PC technology and the Internet technology as it relates to other what I'll call life-changing technology influences, the speed with which both of these have become critical mass and literally have begun to change the way we live, interact, and work together is orders of magnitude faster than the other major ones that you typically think about. Electricity, the telephone, the automobile, all things that dramatically changed the way business is conducted in the world, much less this country, took anywhere from 85 to 120 years to be totally adopted and ubiquitous into the environment. I'm pretty convinced that both the PC and Internet technology reached critical mass last Christmas. And the reason I know that is because my wife called me 4 days before Christmas last year and said, "Oh my God, we're in big trouble. I did not go out and buy the Barbie Dream Dollhouse that Rachel has said she has wanted for the entire year. You need to go find it." I am not a last-minute Christmas shopper. All my Christmas shopping was done through the Internet by Thanksgiving. So the very first thing I do as a natural reaction is pick up the phone and start calling everybody. I called Toys R Us. They were laughing at me. I called Service Merchandise. I said, "There's one on the floor and they're fighting over it." And then I said, "Wait a minute. I'm in this business." And I went out to eToys, and they had 25 in stock with a button I could push for guaranteed delivery by Christmas Day. And on New Year's Eve in Dallas, we had a tremendous ice storm, but that FedEx truck showed up at my door and brought the Barbie doll dream house, and I was able to live in the house for one more year. That's critical mass. And if I'm doing it and my mother's doing it, just about everybody's doing it. So the Internet most certainly is changing the way we're working. But what's interesting to me is that the first natural reaction that most people, especially board of directors and key economic buyers within most retailing companies, is that the Internet equates to selling stuff on the web. I call that MBA management by airline magazines. The concept of selling stuff on the web is most certainly important, but it is not the core that I see as the benefits for the technology that retailers can take advantage of. And it's hitting on some of the key cylinders that all retailers, bar none, are very, very interested in capturing and taking advantage of. For instance, customers now have easy access to more information about products and offerings than they've ever had probably in the history of retailing. Why is that important to retailers? Because you used to have to get in a car and drive around the stores to find out who had what and what it was selling for. Now you can do it with the click of a button. The toys example. What is hot? What does it cost? What is the offering? And what are retailers doing to capture my attention and my business that's going to drive me to be their customer as opposed to someone else's? On your time, in your space, when you are ready to do it. Not when the retailer's open, but when you have the availability to go look at it. It's brand identity. Brand identity is an extremely powerful concept today in retailing because brand identity is really who you are and what you're about, because products to some extent can become commodities. But it's the image associated with the Tommy jeans, or it's the image associated with the polo shirt or the Gap store that draws a lot of people into that world and helps them to become loyal customers. When I worked at Gadzooks, one of the sites that we monitored very frequently was a company called Delias.com located in the Northeast. And this in and of itself bothered us a little bit because we didn't really have as cool a website, and we most certainly weren't selling anything on the web. We didn't want to be in the catalog business. It was not our core competency. It was not our focus. We were just doing fine in the malls with the brick and mortar. The problem, however, is that this site is more than just selling stuff on the web. It's a community of people, of teenage girls who can associate and relate not only to what this company represents, but other teenagers and teenage girls who are going through the same things in their point in life. Look at some of these examples. An Insider's Photos Journalist account of fashions for spring. A whole new approach to your body, brain, and life as a girl. That's a community. And that type of draw can suck people in and make them very loyal, very brand-conscious people. And what we were finding, and we saw this at the Bombay Company, is that when you have that kind of destination target power at a fraction of what it would cost you to do in any other medium, you're driving people into your stores because they want to be part of that. To the extent that your store is an extension of this community, it's a driver into the brick and mortar. It's customer service and loyalty, and it's getting to know your customer better. I said this a couple years ago, and I still believe it's painfully true today. The two key differentiators going into this century, this new century, in retailing are going to be access to information, and more importantly, what you do with it, and customer service. What are you doing to pull that customer into your world to buy your stuff that your competitor is not? An interesting example of this on the web is Eddie Bauer, who has been into the web world for quite some time now and has really figured out how to make this work. And look at some of the interesting things that they have on their website. A wish list. One of the things, if you've ever tried to implement a gift registry system in a brick and mortar world, it was extremely difficult to do because you typically had to pull all the information in overnight and accumulate it and pump it out the next day, and only to find that during that day somebody bought 3 of the same thing, which is not really what you want to do. Well, the internet kind of takes that problem away. This is a wish list where people can go out and basically create, here's the stuff I need you to buy, grandma, granddad, mom, brother, sister. Go out there and get it for me. A gift registry system. How to return. They've erased the borders between, we're not just, this is a store that has a different set of rules. This is Eddie Bauer. And that's how the customer looks at this. So when I go in a store, when I go on a web, I want it to be Eddie Bauer. So you buy stuff on the web, you don't like it, you go to a store and return it. You don't have to worry about dealing with a separate set of rules. That's Eddie Bauer. And then something that I think is tremendously underused in the retail community, frequently asked questions. What are some of the things that typically people are getting inundated with, whether it's in a store or calls to the corporate office? I mean, as a technical community, this is invaluable to us. We use this all the time on the web. But customers are starting to figure this out, that the people who offer this is a very highly value-added service. Just to give you an example, I created the first e-commerce website for the Bombay Company back in 1996 on a shoestring budget because this was a fad that was going to go away, like the CB simulator things. And we put a section in there, contact us. If you've got questions, click here. And it had a section for merchandising, had a section for store operations and human resources. And I had personally, CIO of the company, gone to these admins in these functional areas and said, look, I'm going to set up the email environment to forward these emails to you. I expect we'll get 5 a week. Can you just route these to the appropriate people and make sure that these questions get answered? No problem. It was a customer service value-added thing. The first week we got 800 emails. 800. I had 3 very upset admins in my office in my face. And really, but what that told me, and I took this into the board of directors, and I said, these customers are looking for an avenue to talk to us. And it was across the spectrum. Here's what we love. Here's what we hate. This person was rude. I would hire this person if I owned the store. Invaluable information that cost us next to nothing to get. And finally, it's integrating the two worlds together. I like this term, click and mortar, because it's really taking advantage of a new medium, but leveraging what you already are really, really good at, which is the brick and mortar, the locations, the allocation, the planning, and the distribution. Combine the two worlds and take advantage of something which is a fraction of the cost of the majority of the other mediums, television, catalog, radio. One of the other major forces that are really forcing retailers to react, the speed of action. This e-world is causing business environments, business processes, business interaction, business information assimilation to occur much faster than it really has ever done in the past, and it's only going to get better or worse depending on which side of that glass you're looking at. Price wars, competitive response, time to market with products, supply chain efficiency, internal and external communication, and that all-important customer service. Some of the things that I actually saw as a CIO that I interpreted differently. I took what I'd heard and we put it together and said, what are these people really saying? And then we congealed it all and said, here's what we need to do with our environment, which is why we headed down this digital nervous system path at the Bombay company at Gadzooks. Because when I heard things like, I just need a simple addition to the POS to display some new information, that was every other week. And it was them having to react to environments that they were being forced to deal with from competitors who were coming up with interesting new promotional campaigns, or they were trying to be proactive over other competitors, and it forced us to have to go down to that store and make a change in an environment that wasn't very conducive to change. That was environment flexibility and responsiveness, and I was always the bottleneck. It really bothered me. The associates are always late with new employee paperwork. A critical process improvement. The average turn of the associate in most specialty retail or mall-based environments is 100% a year. The best laid plans for training these people don't add up to a hill of beans if you're turning to people 100% every year. And I don't know, and the retailers probably will pick up on this in this room, but how many of you all have been into a store recently where it was almost better not to get help from the associate because you were either training that person or you couldn't find them? And had there been an interactive kiosk in the store, you probably could have gotten in and out of there quite a bit faster. They can't find the people. And when they find the good ones, they can't keep them. The competition's surrounding you in a mall. They'll leave for a nickel an hour. How do we improve or analyze this information faster? Let the systems do the work for us so we understand what the issues are with the turnover and how do we be proactive about keeping our best people. Our shrink in this district is unacceptable. Retail is a fascinating industry to me. If you're a $300 million retailer, every year you open a window and you pour $3 million out of it. And it just goes. The wind just carries away. It's called shrink. Well, an interesting majority of the statistics are showing of shrink is responsible from in-store theft, employees who are actually taking a few extra dollars out of the till or walking out the door with your own product. Our shrink at Gadzooks in one district was almost 13%. The average industry norm is 1%. We were convinced people were backing up to the back of the store with a truck and loading dollies into it. Well, that's money that's flying out the door. And what's interesting is a critical process, and I'll talk about this a little more when I get into the digital nervous system, but how do I take this system environment and let it work for me so I can more proactively fight this environment? And interestingly enough, if I reduced shrink even 1 point, I probably paid for the entire infrastructure change. How are markdowns and employee discounts impacting our margin? Again, a critical data analysis and access question. How can we instill the best practices of our top performing stores? I was always amazed that the 80-20 rule applied in our store environment. 20% of the stores were always blowing the doors off of every marketing campaign and promotional activity that we ever put together. Why is that? Is it the location? Is it the people? What was it? Well, why aren't we finding that out, consolidating that information, and leveraging it to the 80% so we can raise their bar? Enhance corporate communication, knowledge management. Is there a way to identify? Bill has come out with a book that really kind of changed my career path. I went out of the retail environment and ended up coming to work for this company about 5 months ago. really as a result of this book, believe it or not. Because he talks about how the world is going through this interesting transformation in terms of how we live. He's got an interesting chapter in there about, people don't really make a big deal out of the electricity lifestyle. I mean, it's just a common part of every day. The internet lifestyle is still a big deal to most people. Very, very quickly, probably within the next 3 to 5 years, people are going to say, well, what internet lifestyle? I mean, it's just part of what I do every day. The web lifestyle, I talked about the eToys example. The knowledge workers with their web work style, the integration of email becoming the most central point of communication within and externally throughout various companies. And then this notion of the business digital nervous system. And I love this analogy, and this is what really captivated me in this book. The analogy obviously is relating your systems, environment, and infrastructure to the human nervous system. And if you look at what the human nervous system does for us, it takes care of things that are critical to your survival for you, so you don't have to worry about them, so you can focus on the things that are critical to you, like road rage or going to Starbucks and getting that first cup of coffee in the morning. Things like your heart beating. You don't have to think about your heart beating. You don't have to think about breathing. It just happens. But if it didn't happen, you would die. Most of us would not have made it to this meeting this morning. Well, the analogy is identical for the business world. A digital nervous system allows a company's internal processes to operate smoothly and quickly, enables an organization to respond to customer feedback quickly, gives it the ability to react to a competitive environment in a timely manner, empowers those employees with critical knowledge, and allows you to focus on business, not on technology. I was amazed for 6 years, every Monday morning, a very highly paid group of individuals with a ton of experience would get in a room for 4 hours and talk about what happened. We weren't talking about what we were going to do about it. It took us 4 hours to figure out what happened. When we ought to have understood that, there should have been a mechanism that helped me get to the core of what happened in my functional area so I could walk in that meeting and say, Jesus, this is what we better do about this. And the people who are figuring this out are the ones that are jumping ahead. What it requires, connected PCs and an integrated software environment. Let me give you a retail-specific example. I talked about that shrink world and how that's just money flying out of a window. And what's interesting to me is I went and sat down with our VP of loss prevention at both companies, and I said, what are the rules here? I mean, how do you guys go after this? And they said, well, there's a lot of different things we attack, but the core of it, probably a good bulk of the activity, falls into a very definable set of rules that are typically broken on a normal basis across 5,000 or 6,000 people. And what's interesting is those rules are hidden, or those activities, those rules that are being broken are hidden in that transaction detail that we're pulling in every night. Wouldn't it be cool if we could have a table of these rules, spin all those transactions against those rules, the ones that are broken, we send an email out to those stores and say, hey, we saw that. Don't do that. Because 9 out of 10 times, he pointed out, they will test you to see if you're looking. And if you're not looking, they test a little further. And chances are $1,000, $5,000 into the test, they leave, and the money's gone because it took you that long to figure out what the heck was going on. That's your system working for you because it not only told them that you were looking at it, it kind of made you appear bigger than you were, but it focused then in on what to look at quite a bit faster than is typically occurring today in most retailers. Real quickly, ultimately, a DNS is going to transform 3 major elements of any business. Relationships to customers and business partners. Is the current customer feedback loop adequate? What do customers think about your products and service levels? Can you improve or simplify the customer experience in your stores? Do your business partners have the information they need to best serve you? Or are you their bottleneck? Information flow and relationships among workers within the company. I was constantly amazed that when things went really well, the operations people and the merchants were fighting over the credit. When things went really bad, it was, we've got bad product, no, we've got bad execution. Or the times that they would do huge floor moves and the operations group found out about it at the last minute. Where was the labor support to execute that plan? Great plan, just couldn't execute it. Does field management have access to relevant and actionable metrics about the business? Are you empowering them to run their segment of the business. And finally, internal business processes. Employee store information flow quickly and accurately through the organization. Field expense reimbursement, something as simple as getting paid back for expenses that the DMs incur. DMs are like the sergeants of the company. A really good DM force can turn a company around in a period of 12 months. You start losing these people, you're going to die. Here's how Microsoft wants to play in this space. This is typically what we're starting to see in retail infrastructures. You've got this environment called the store, and we're actively going after this market. We want to be the platform or the plumbing choice, solution of choice in the store, because more and more we're seeing that the store environment is no longer just ringing transactions and receiving inventory. It's email. It's online information. It's e-forms. It's corporate system access. DMs who want to go in and access some of the systems through terminal server, through your VPN, through the internet. And it's new applications, that ability to very, very quickly develop and deploy using those web-enabled technologies, these types of things without having a time to market of 3 to 6 months. We're talking 3 to 6 days now. We obviously have been in the corporate architecture world, but we're going after the data center. And you're going to see some things today, or over the next 2 days with Windows 2000, application server, BizTalk, some of the areas where we're really trying to convince the CIO that yes, you can run your mission critical systems on our platform. And there's advantages to having that platform, that Windows DNA, that Win32 API, end to end. The BizTalk server world, I'm extremely excited about this because for 6 years, EDI was always on my list and it was always the last thing on the list, no matter what else we put on the list. Really needed to do it, never found time to do it. And it was because at the Bombay company, we were excited if our vendors had a phone on the Pacific Rim. I mean, no kidding. They had a fax. They didn't have a fax machine. We bought them one. We would do the same thing with PCs if they would promise to go out to the extranet and look at the orders that we were sending through XML via BizTalk server to say, here's what's coming. Tell me when it's coming back through an intranet, extranet site. And obviously the BizTalk server world, the integration for the retailer. Typically, if I wanted a best-of-breed environment with a point-of-sale system and a merchandising system, I was usually responsible for integrating the two. Well, you're going to see today and tomorrow some new technology, this XML BizTalk environment, that's going to make that tremendously simpler for people. It's going to take a while to integrate that, but I'm very excited about the possibilities here. Obviously, we want to play in e-commerce, but again, remember, I don't view this just as B2C, selling stuff to the web. I view that as leveraging that technology within the entire end-to-end infrastructure. And then finally, the whole knowledge management, leveraging that end-to-end, all these solutions for the digital nervous system. And again, you've probably seen this slide before. We're dead serious about playing from end to end. The high-end server clusters down to the smart cards and the handhelds. I get really excited when I see demos of wireless handheld or PC, hand PC devices that you can now dial into the internet and receive information from pretty much just wherever you are. To the extent that that Windows CE device can run a browser, and I can run a terminal server session in that, I can run any application I have in corporate office on a wireless handheld device. Here today, no. Here within the next 2 years, I think so. Embedded NT, Windows CE, we're going to be talking about all these things within the next couple of years, but tremendously exciting what's coming down the road, those options that the retailers love. And real quickly, I'm going to spin through what has now been fully deployed at Bombay, but when I first saw or first thought of Windows in the store environment, this is what I thought of. Scared me to death. Windows everywhere. My phone lines at the help desk were lit up like a Christmas tree, 7/24. Well, obviously that's not what our intent was. And what we ended up with was more of a controlled environment that was kind of the best of the best. Took advantage of the Windows 32 API programming and stability of the NT infrastructure while it integrated the legacy environment and locked down the environment for task-centric workers. What were the business drivers for Bombay? The existing DOS POS application was written in Foxborough, but it was mission critical and it did everything we wanted it to do. The need for new intranet applications, we had to lock down the user interface. We needed to enhance the customer experience, and our current time to market with applications or changes to that environment was just way too slow. So what did we do from the Windows DNA solution? run existing DOS POS application and NTVDM. All their applications were browser-centric. Either we bought them off the shelf that way, or probably more likely, at least the first year out, they were developed in HTML or VB. Locked down the user interface with a third-party application, an IP-based Ethernet in-store network, expansion hub for future registers, kiosks, whatever, FTP internet polling. They're actually polling through a VPN through the internet using a third-party scripting tool that uses FTP. And then a new option that was funny. I was in the CIO, was talking to the CIO on the phone, and she said, the CIO just walked in my office, she said, by spring, we really want to have kiosks in the store. Is that even thinkable? And I said, well, you plug it into the hub. You're there. I mean, it's no different than the register. And that's the beauty of the environment. It had to be extensible. It had to allow those types of things to work that quickly. So what did we come up with? This taskbar along the top, locked down at any point in time. Any associate could know exactly where they were or exactly where they wanted to go by pressing those buttons. Menu-driven, VB-based application, third-party vendor. But there's that legacy point-of-sale system that so much time had been invested in, and it was working extremely well. Ultimately, they're going to phase that out. But to do this, they didn't want a big banging. There was too much change being introduced into the environment, and this is why the whole system was there in the first place. Couldn't get rid of it. An information area called HOT. This is really kind of the company newsletter environment where, and they'll experiment with this, everything from videos to an interesting employee retention concept. The team or the store that wins the latest spiff, the DM will go out, take a digital image, and we'll post it on the entire company intranet for all the stores to see. And those people, that was the most exciting thing they ever heard of. We were going to be the showcase for the store for that promotion, or the company. Everything from information phone lists, product information areas, district SKU search, product locator, a product library. It was very interesting. We had invested all this time, these graphics, this information on a website so our customers could go out and understand what our products were. Yet we had customers coming into our stores asking our associates questions, is this a solid veneer, or is this a solid wood or a cherry veneer? I have no idea. Well, it's all on our website. Why don't we just take the website and put it in the store? And that's kind of what they've done with this product library. You can kind of get the gist of this, but the speed with which they were able to develop these things and deploy them, because the worst thing that can happen is if a new link shows up here is that the link doesn't work. It doesn't bring down the point of sale system, makes us look stupid, but our exposure, our risk is significantly minimized. All different types of forms, again, DHTML based. There's the example of pulling that information from the website down into the store so the associates can use it, either as a training tool or, heck, put a kiosk in there, let the customers go answer their own questions if the associate's busy. And you would click on one of those and it would bring up all kinds of information on the product. There's the flash sales log, email environment, and employee information. What's interesting here is that probably mid to late summer next year, they're going to start experimenting with, they've just implemented PeopleSoft, putting HTML or web-based employee self-service modules in their stores. Get rid of that paper so that when you hire somebody and they fill out that paperwork online, it's there the next day, somebody reviews it and posts it to the system, as opposed to that person working for 3 weeks. They don't get their first check and they leave because they're upset because somebody lost the paperwork. A lot of opportunities here, and I'm going to be wrapping up right now. After Y2K, which ain't over yet, but I'm pretty pleased with how far we are, how close we are to it, and the world hasn't ended yet. But after Y2K, I believe that the retail IT management and budgets are going to start being refocused back into that store environment. They've spent a ton of time already with enhancing the supply chain and getting the mission-critical data collection systems in place. It's time now to start replacing those aging in-store infrastructures. Retailers are starting to understand and desire the benefits from today's technology. They're starting to get it, and they don't get it, I'm going to make sure they do. The majority of the existing store system infrastructures right now are not cutting it, and there are many new affordable options. So over the next 2 days, we're going to give you a pretty hardcore dose of how we want to play in this space. The digital nervous system, Win 2000 and COM, embedded NT, CE, digital dashboards, extremely exciting area you're going to see late this afternoon. When I first saw this, it freaked me out because I had been trying to do it for 5 years, in an environment that just wasn't conducive to it. SQL 7 e-commerce and the rest of the things on the agenda. We're dead serious about winning this space. We want the retail environment. We want to give the retailers the best options we think that they can have. And we're investing $3 billion a year in research and development to come up with environments and product offerings that also work extremely well together. They're scalable, they're reliable, they're very highly integrated, interoperable, and are aimed to reducing total cost of ownership. And I appreciate your time. Hopefully this will be a good couple days for you. Thank you all very much.